Imagine the air is warm, humming softly with the song of cicadas beneath a parchment-colored sky over the rolling hills of Arcadia. The grasses bend in a sleepy breeze that carries the scent of wild herbs, thyme, sage, and a faint hint of wildflowers that bloom in the cracks of dusty stone. Sheep bells echo from far-off slopes, and you can almost hear the quiet footsteps of shepherds moving slowly with their flocks as dawn's pale light touches the peaks. Arcadia, in the ancient Greek imagination, was a place of simple life and constant connection to nature. Here, shepherds tended goats and sheep in quiet valleys, living in small stone huts with reed roofs, eating barley bread and olives, and drinking fresh water from streams cooled by shade. Life was measured by the rising and setting of the sun, by the changing seasons, and by the gentle rhythm of birth and death among the many gods of Greece. There was one who belonged completely to these hills and valleys, Pan. Unlike the regal Olympians who resided on Mount Olympus, Pan lived among the people, moving through groves and meadows, unseen but felt in every rustle of grass and sudden whisper of wind. Pan's appearance was peculiar, yet comforting to those who knew him. Half man, half goat, with the legs and hooves of a young ram, a sturdy human torso, a beard often tangled with leaves, and small curling horns that peeked through unruly hair. His eyes, it was said, held a mischievous glint, a reminder that nature itself could be playful, surprising, and a little unpredictable. To the Greeks of Arcadia, Pan was not a distant god. He was present in daily life, in the bleating of sheep, in the sudden breeze that cooled the air, in the rustling of bushes that could spook a shepherd momentarily, giving rise to what they called panic, a sudden rush of fear attributed to the wild god's invisible presence. Farmers and shepherds would leave small offerings of goat's milk, cheese, or a few drops of wine near the roots of ancient trees or in quiet groves, thanking Pan for the fertility of the flocks, for safe pastures, and for the simple protection of nature's favor. Life in Arcadia was hard but slow, and in this slowness, the Greeks found time to honor the forces they believed moved through the world around them. In the evenings, shepherds would sit near their fires, their bodies tired from walking with their flocks, their feet dusty and their hands rough from handling ropes and staffs. They would talk quietly about the day's journey, the places where the grass was thick, the signs in the sky that might bring rain, and sometimes about Pan, the god who could be a friend to those who respected him, but who could also bring sudden fright or confusion to those who ignored the ways of nature. Pan's love for music was born from his longing for the gentle beauty of nature and the creatures who lived within it. One story that the Greeks told to explain the creation of Pan's flute was the story of Syrinx, a river nymph known for her quiet beauty and her swift steps along the riverbanks. Syrinx was a follower of Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and she too loved the freedom of the forests and streams, wearing simple robes and carrying a small bow. Her laughter was said to be like the rippling of water over stones, a soft, clear sound that brought peace to those who heard it. One day, Pan saw Syrinx as she moved quietly near a river, her hair catching the sunlight, her feet silent on the moss. Taken by her grace and beauty, Pan approached her, hoping to speak, but Syrinx, frightened by his goat-like appearance, fled into the forest. The chase was quiet, filled with the sound of Syrinx's quick breathing and the soft rustle of leaves. Pan, persistent but not angry, followed her through groves and along streams, calling out softly, hoping to ease her fear. Finally, Syrinx reached the edge of a river, her heart pounding, and called upon the river spirits to save her. Just as Pan reached out, Syrinx's body transformed into a cluster of tall, slender reeds, swaying softly in the breeze. Pan, stopping in his tracks, stood quietly, the moment suspended in the warm air. The reeds whispered, brushing against each other, creating a soft, sighing sound that touched something inside Pan, a mixture of sorrow, wonder, and quiet curiosity. Intrigued, Pan gently plucked a few of the reeds, noticing that when the wind passed through them, each reed made a different mournful sound. He carefully cut them to different lengths, tying them together with strips of soft leather, creating what would become known as the Pan Flute, or Syrinx, in honor of the nymph who had become the reeds. When Pan played the flute, the sound was unlike anything else in the world. It was soft yet clear, haunting yet comforting, like the wind moving through a grove at dusk, carrying with it the scent of earth and the quiet promise of night. The music of the flute seemed to carry the essence of Arcadia, the calm of the hills, the gentle rustling of olive trees, the distant bleating of sheep, and the sigh of the breeze. Shepherds who heard Pan's flute would pause, their hands resting on their staffs, eyes closing as the notes drifted through the worn air. Travelers passing through the hills would stop, momentarily forgetting their destination, caught in the soft embrace of the melody. The Greeks said that Pan's flute could drive people a little crazy, not in a way that brought harm, but in a way that stirred the soul, reminding listeners of the untamed beauty of the world, of the simplicity and mystery that lay hidden beneath the routine of daily life. In the daily lives of the Arcadian Greeks, Pan's music became a quiet companion. Women grinding grain in the morning would pause, the rhythmic sound of the stones slowing as they listened for the distant, gentle notes. Shepherd boys would practice whittling their own small flutes, hoping to capture even a fraction of the wild god's haunting music. At night, as the stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, the notes of Pan's flute would blend with the chirping of crickets, the occasional soft bleat of a sheep, and the crackle of small fires. The people of Arcadia would drift into sleep, comforted by the idea that Pan was near, watching over the hills, his music keeping the world gently awake. And so Pan's flute became a symbol of nature's quiet power, a reminder that the world was alive with sound and spirit, that the simplest notes carried the deepest meanings, and that the beauty of the world often lay in its smallest, quietest places. In the valleys and villages, shepherds would carve their own flutes from reeds or wood, imitating the syrinx of Pan. Boys would practice during the long hours spent tending goats, learning to coax soft, wavering notes from the reeds, letting the sound echo against the hillsides, mingling with the rustling of grass and the calls of distant birds. Women working at looms would hear the music carried on the breeze and pause in their weaving, letting their minds drift to the rhythms of nature outside. Farmers sowing seeds or harvesting olives would take comfort in the soft melodies, reminding them that Pan was near, watching over the cycles of growth and rest that ruled their lives. In the marketplaces, you might find an old man playing a simple flute, the notes rising above the chatter of traders, blending with the calls of merchants selling figs and honey, olives and wine. The music was not loud or demanding. It was a gentle presence, a reminder that even in the bustle of daily commerce, the wild spirit of nature could still be heard if you paused to listen. Pan, though a god of gentle music and laughter, was also a god who inspired respect, even fear. Among the Greeks, his name was the root of the word panic, that sudden rush of fear that could seize travelers in lonely places or shepherds in the deep of night. To honor Pan, the Greeks held small festivals in the hills and caves, away from the grand temples of the Olympian gods. These gatherings were not like the grand processions held for Zeus or Athena. They were simpler, more intimate, taking place in groves, beside springs, or within the cool, shadowy mouths of caves, where the people believed Pan liked to dwell. At these festivals, music was at the heart of worship. Men would play flutes, their melodies rising softly through the evening air, as offerings of wine, cheese, and honey were placed on stone altars. Dances would circle around small fires, the dancers moving slowly at first, letting the music guide them, the notes of the syrinx winding around them like a soft wind through reeds. The laughter would come, soft and warm, as people felt the presence of Pan, the wildness within themselves awakening in a harmless way. There was a sense of joy in letting go, in dancing under the stars with bare feet touching the earth, reminding themselves of the connection between their lives and the land that sustained them. The Greeks believed certain groves and springs were sacred to Pan, places where his presence could be felt most strongly. Travelers passing these places would leave small offerings, a few drops of wine, a piece of bread, a song on a flute, hoping for safe passage or the favor of the god. These groves were places of quiet, where the leaves whispered and the wind carried scents of pine and earth. It was said that if you listened carefully, you might hear Pan's flute in the rustling of the leaves, a soft melody that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Shepherds who camped near these groves at night would sometimes hear the sound of Pan's flute, and they would pull their cloaks closer around themselves, feeling a mix of comfort and unease, a reminder that the land was alive, that they were guests in a world older and wilder than themselves. Though Pan was a friend to shepherds and a bringer of laughter, he was also a god whose music could unsettle. The Greeks believed that sudden, unexplained fear in the wild, panic, was a sign of Pan's presence, a reminder of the power of nature and the need for respect. There were stories of travelers hearing Pan's flute in the distance, its notes clear and soft, drawing them off their paths, leading them to places they had not intended to go. The music could feel comforting, like a lullaby, but also strange, pulling at something deep inside, stirring thoughts of freedom and wildness that the ordered lives of the Greeks often kept hidden. Some said that those who heard Pan's flute might dance until they could dance no more, losing themselves in the rhythm, forgetting their worries, letting go of the burdens of daily life. Others said that the flute's music would bring dreams filled with visions of forests, rivers, and starlit skies, dreams that left them waking with a strange longing in their hearts. As the Greeks went about their daily lives, the notes of Pan's flute remained with them, a soft melody that tied their lives to the land, reminding them that nature's wild spirit was always near. In the fields, in the groves, by the rivers, and under the stars, the flute's song was a part of the world's quiet music, a reminder that the divine was not always found in grand temples or in the thunder of Zeus, but often in the soft rustling of reeds and the gentle sigh of the wind. If you heard the Pan's flute, you will also hear Greek tinges that made others all wonder. In those places, I promise, the true nature was never far, never ever tears or tinges were always to be felt. As the centuries moved forward and Greece shifted from the quiet hills of shepherds to the marble columns of city-states, Pan's flute continued to whisper through the valleys, carried by the soft breezes that moved across olive groves and vineyards. In Athens, where philosophers debated under the Stoa and merchants gathered in the agora, stories of Pan remained, though the god himself belonged to the hills rather than the stone streets of the city. Soldiers preparing for battle would offer small prayers to Pan, asking for courage and calm, believing that the wild god's laughter could scatter fear and steady trembling hands. It was said that during the Battle of Marathon, when the Athenians faced the might of the Persians, Pan appeared to one of the generals, promising to bring confusion to the enemy. When victory was won, the Athenians built a small shrine to Pan in a cave under the Acropolis. A reminder that even in the heart of the city, the wild spirit of Arcadia had its place. When Rome rose and absorbed the lands of Greece, the Romans, who respected the ancient stories, adopted Pan into their own pantheon, blending him with their rustic god Faunus, the god of fields and shepherds. Faunus, like Pan, was seen as a guardian of flocks, a bringer of fertility, and a spirit of the wild places that still existed at the edges of Roman roads and farms. The flute, too, remained a symbol, and the syrinx was used in Roman festivals, its soft notes drifting over vineyards and quiet hillsides in the evenings. In the Roman imagination, as in the Greek, the music of the flute was a reminder of nature's quiet power, of the balance between civilization and the wildness that always lay just beyond the city gates. Festivals for Faunus, and later for Lupercalia, involved music, laughter, and moments where the structured order of Roman life was loosened, allowing for dance, song, and the soft chaos that Pan represented. Throughout Greek and Roman worlds, the syrinx continued to be played by shepherds and farmers, its gentle sound a companion during long hours tending to flocks or fields. The process of making a syrinx was itself a quiet ritual. Selecting reeds from riverbanks, cutting them carefully, testing the notes by blowing softly across each piece, and tying them together with strips of leather. It was a simple instrument, but its simplicity was its strength, creating a melody that felt connected to the reed's origin along quiet streams and the wind moving through grass. For children, learning to play the flute was a pastime that connected them to the land. And for adults, it was a way to remember the simplicity of nature, even as they navigated the challenges of survival in a world shaped by gods and men alike. As centuries turned and the Roman Empire gave way to the kingdoms and forests of medieval Europe, Pan's image did not disappear entirely. In the quiet, misty valleys of Europe, stories persisted of horned, goat-legged figures who played pipes, bringing laughter, confusion, and sometimes fear to travelers and shepherds. These figures, blending Pan with local spirits, became part of European folklore. The satyrs of old, the forest spirits, and even the mischievous fauns who appeared in legends and tales told by firesides in stone cottages. The music of the flute, too, persisted, now played on wooden pipes and shepherd's whistles, carrying the same soft, haunting melodies that had drifted through Arcadia and Roman hillsides centuries before. The sound was comforting, a reminder that the land was alive, that even in a world of castles and cathedrals, the quiet rhythms of nature remained. Artists and poets of the Renaissance, fascinated by the myths of Greece and Rome, revived the image of Pan, painting him in quiet groves, his flute in hand, surrounded by nymphs or resting beside streams. The soft, pastoral scenes they created brought Pan's world back into focus for a new generation, reminding viewers of the gentle beauty of nature and the myths that once tied people to the land. In literature, poets like John Keats and later writers drew upon the image of Pan and his flute, using it as a symbol of natural beauty, freedom, and the wild spirit that lives quietly within human hearts. The flute's music, though never loud, became a symbol of resistance to the rush of civilization, a reminder of the calm that could be found in nature, in simplicity, and in moments of quiet reflection. Today, when you see a simple reed flute, when you hear the soft notes of a shepherd's pipe drifting across a quiet field, you are hearing an echo of Pan's world, a sound that has crossed thousands of years, connecting ancient shepherds in Arcadia to your own quiet moments. Pan's flute is a reminder that even in a world of noise and haste, there is a place for slow, simple melodies, for the gentle chaos of nature, and for the soft laughter of a God who watched over the hills, reminding people of the beauty and unpredictability of life. It is a reminder that in the simplest notes of a flute, there can be an entire world, the rustling of reeds beside a river, the sigh of wind through olive branches, the bleating of sheep on a distant slope, and the soft glow of dawn over hills that have seen countless generations come and go. As you breathe softly now, letting your eyes grow heavy, you might wonder, why does the simple music of Pan's flute still touch something deep within us, even after so many centuries? Is it the melody itself, or the memory of a time when people listened to the world, when the softest sound could remind us that we are a part of the earth's quiet music? Let Pan's flute guide you to restful sleep, its soft, haunting notes carrying you into dreams of rolling hills, whispering groves, and the gentle laughter of a wild God who asks nothing of you except to listen.